All right, good morning, everybody. We're now ready to begin today's webinar, Leading Through Crisis. My name is Bethany Dennis. I'm with the Rutgers Center for HR and Leadership Development, and I'm going to be your host and moderator today. Today's webinar, we're going to discuss how leaders can experiment, reprioritize, and take actions that will help them and their teams emerge from this crisis stronger on the other end. This executive and professional education webinar is presented by the Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relations Center for HR and Leadership Development, which develops and delivers innovative learning and development solutions that strengthen and advance the individual and organization as a whole through a powerful combination of expert class instruction and peer interaction, led by distinguished Rutgers University faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. This webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes. Participants are muted. So please submit your questions in the WebEx questions box, and then we're going to answer them, leaving time at the end for formal Q&A. All right, go to your bio slide, please. It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Sharon Lydon. She's the Associate Dean of Alumni and Corporate Engagement and a Professor of Professional Practice, Supply Chain Management for the Rutgers Business School, and she's a Certified Executive Coach. She teaches leadership and change and professional development courses for the Rutgers Business School's Executive MBA program, the International Executive MBA program in China, and the Center for Executive Education. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being here. We really appreciate it. Over to you.
Much. It's great to be here today. I'm excited to talk about how do we lead change during this crisis. So our agenda items are: what does good leadership look like during a pandemic? So this is an article that was written by Harvard Business Review faculty Michaela Carasy and Amy Edmondson. We're also going to look at characteristics of effective crisis leaders. And I had some of the work from Erica James. She's the Dean of Emory's Business School and has done 20 years of research on effective crisis leaders. I've had the honor and privilege of getting to know her and also hearing her speak at different conferences. Then we're going to look at Kotter's 8 steps to lead change. This is a framework. John Kotter is a Harvard Business School faculty member and professor emeritus. The grandfather of leading change, if you will, and we're going to look at that model going forward. And then what followers want in a leader. So in the beginning, it's going to be a little bit more lecture style, and then we're going to move into more interactive session where I'm going to ask you to put things into the chat. Okay, so we're going to look at some leadership examples. So New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, there was a article in the Washington Post headline that said, New Zealand isn't just flattening the curve, it's squashing it. So on April 6, 2020, the country reported only 54 cases and only one COVID-19 death since the pandemic started. And I recently checked the Avi Schiffman dashboard. So this is a young man around 17 or 18 years old that created this dashboard while he was in quarantine. And so I looked at New Zealand as of yesterday. They had less than 1,500 cases and only 21 deaths. So what is Prime Minister Ardern doing right? We're looking at what are good examples of leadership. So on March 21st, she delivered an 8-minute televised statement to the nation in which she announced a 4-level COVID-19 alert system. And she modeled this after the fire risk system that they already used in New Zealand. So this familiar approach set clear guidelines for how the government would step up its resources and what they would ask of the citizens as infections grew. So the Prime Minister announced when New Zealand had only 52 confirmed cases, she set the alert level at 2, restricting some travel, urging people to limit their contact. But when cases grew to 204 in 4 days, she raised the alert system to level 4, triggering a nationwide lockdown. So what did she do right? So her actions showed that she was honest and that she cared, yielded the support of the country. Ardern's explicit step system meant that people knew in advance the escalation was coming. So people like to know what's coming in advance whenever they can, even though we're in such an uncertain situation. They knew what would be required of them and they accepted the challenge. So, overall, as a leader, how your message is delivered mattered. So, Arden communicated with clear, honest, and compassionate information, and she acknowledged the daily sacrifices to come and inspired people to forge ahead, bearing them together. So she closed that address by thanking New Zealanders for all that they were about to do. And her powerful parting words became a global rallying cry. She said, "Please be strong, be kind, and unite against COVID-19." Okay, so here's another example of someone who also acted quickly and can kind of share with us or show us how leaders can behave in times of crisis. So, in a moment of tremendous ambiguity, Adam Silver, the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, made the decisive action on March 12th. So, this is really early, announced the suspension for at least 30 days of the NBA. So, this is well before state governments began restricting public gatherings in the United States, and it set off a chain of events that almost certainly altered the course of the virus. And over 1 million fans would now avoid potential exposure at games. And I remember that there was a lot of discussion about the people that worked at the stadiums and being very concerned about their well-being, whether, from safety and also financial. So the decision had a powerful ripple effect. So it led to the suspension of NCAA's historic March Madness, the National Hockey League, then the Major League Baseball, the Boston Marathon. So all of these different sports halted their operations, which I think was very telling. So this action happened in the sports arena. Maybe material may not mean a lot to you, but here was the NBA, an organization more than 8 billion in revenue in 2019, known for its physical prowess, its competitiveness, not its excess caution, acting with what appeared at the time to be great caution and reserve. And it really got people thinking. So this is the challenge for you as the leader, overcoming your instincts so you can lead effectively. So what are our instincts? We try to wait for additional information, right? We want to get more information, more clarity. Is this really happening? We downplay the threat and withhold bad news. Nobody really wants to be the bearer of bad news. We double down to explain our actions more clearly, kind of stick to staying the course. And so, what these two leaders and other leaders have done right is that they reveal a great deal about what good leadership looks like. So leaders are facing what is called ambiguous threat. So ambiguous threat is defined as warning signs are fuzzy and potential harm could be large. And we as humans have many biases. So we have cognitive biases, dysfunctional group dynamics, organizational pressures, and it pushes leaders towards discounting the risk, delaying action, which can often lead to catastrophic events. So which is death and pain. So it takes a unique kind of leader to push against the natural human tendency to downplay and delay. And so based on this leadership, there are distilled 4 lessons for leaders and how they should act in this common crisis or in this crisis. So first is acting with urgency. Second is communicating with transparency. Third is taking responsibility and focusing on solving problems. And fourth is engaging in constant updating. So, what does this look like? Acting with urgency. So, we as humans want to wait for more information, gain clarity. As I said before, it's a natural tendency. Many of us may also act with a very natural tendency to fight, flight, or freeze. And so delaying all of these decisions could have devastating effects. So acting with urgency means leaders jump into the fray without all the information. And both of these leaders were doing that. Arden publicly described it as an explicit choice to go hard and to go early. The second item is communicating with transparency. So we as leaders, we don't want to communicate bad news. We want to be the cheerleaders. We want to be the visionaries. We want to share our inspiration with others. So this is very hard and it's risky, to share this bad news because it demoralizes employees, customers, or citizens. It could threaten their a leader's popularity, but it takes wisdom and some courage to understand that communicating with transparency is a vital antidote to this risk. So Arden stated in her early national address, I understand all of this rapid change creates anxiety and uncertainty. So this is a quote, especially when it means challenging how we live. That's why today I'm going to set out for you as clearly as possible what you can expect as we continue to fight the virus together. So she made regular public addresses. Now, Adam Silver. So March 12th, he made the announcement to delay. By March 19th, he had created 16 what he called hiatus memos that he delivered to the team. So really a lot of communication. So communicating with transparency, what does that mean? It means providing honest and accurate descriptions of the reality, being as clear as humanly possible about what you know, what you anticipate, and what it means for people. And it's crucial to convey your message in a way that people can understand. I know that a lot of leaders might be using some analogies. She used the familiar four-level alert system, so that really helps. Heard other leaders, talking about turning the faucet on, lowering it, also really helps. So communication also critical is to be hopeful. And the vision of the future can be directed towards if we all come together. So you heard a lot of people say flattening the curve, and that how we all could help in this pandemic. So I'm originally from New York, and I live in the New Jersey area right now. And so right now I see Andrew Cuomo, and he's has his rally cry of, stay home, stop the spread, and save lives. So another example of a rallying cry. So responding productively. So this is the third um, sort of response that could happen. So there are going to be missteps, right? So this is a novel situation. It's complex. We don't know what we don't know, right? The virus is mutating. There are all kinds of different challenges. Now we're hearing that it does affect children in different ways. So how leaders respond to the inevitable missteps and unexpected challenges is just as important as how they first address the crisis. So first, if there is a misstep, try not to revert to defensiveness or blame when mistakes are made. Indeed, just stay focused on the goal and look ahead to continuing solving the next most pressing problem. So, if you remember in the beginning, we all heard about the unfairness of the NBA players and their access to tests when, we all, as just regular human beings, needed all the symptoms even to just get tested. And so Silver publicly acknowledged the criticism, so he didn't avoid it. He accepted its validity and emphasized the real fundamental problem of the testing shortage with an eye on the larger picture. So he said, I quote, I, of course, understand Mayor Bill de Blasio's point, and is it unfortunate that we are at the position in this society where it's a triage where it comes to testing. So the fundamental issue is obviously that there are insufficient tests. So focused on the problem at hand. And then he said, you can see that the NBA's response to the virus wasn't perfect, but rather to point out that Silver took the criticism in, kept focused on the key issue of fighting the pandemic and making tests more widely available. So for you as the leader, the important response to any misstep is to listen, acknowledge, and orient everyone towards problem solving. Okay, so the next one is engage in constant updating. So an all too common misconception of good leadership is that leaders must be steady and unrelenting in staying the course, right? To stay um, with the strategy that has been outlined. And certain, steadiness, being calm, being stalwart is really important in terms of mood and mood contagion. So you want to definitely be calm in these situations. But given the novelty and rapid evolution of this pandemic, it's wrong to think that the work of leaders is to set a course and to stick to it. So leaders must constantly update their understanding of prior probabilities. I hear a lot of leaders looking at the data and deliberately using strategies to elicit new information and learn rapidly as events unfold and new information comes to light. So when Silver was first making his decision, he used different leaders to help him. So he used the NBA's director of sports medicine, John DeFiore. He contacted his colleagues in China who saw the virus's early toll. He also contacted a former U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. So these were his group of people that he went to. So a leader needs to have their advisory team in the face of an ambiguous threat. And this group may change over time because new information often means new problems have surfaced, and the necessity to have different areas of expertise and willing to shift accordingly is really important. So constantly updating. And the last one, which is really kind of interesting, is tapping into the suffering. So you can see the different pictures that I have here. And if you're noticing that, you know, Silver during this time and Arden both had different situations that required them to be more empathic. So right when this happened, Adam Silver was writing the eulogy for his longtime mentor and former NBA Commissioner David Stern. And also, too, we had the death of Kobe Bryant and 8 others who suddenly died in the helicopter crash. And then for Arden, it was the 1 year anniversary of the Christchurch mosque shooting that killed 51 people, and it was the deadliest mass shooting in the country's history. Um, for um, for Americans and especially New Yorkers and people in the tri-state area, we remember September 11th. And I've heard Andrew Cuomo refer to that, that New Yorkers are tough, we're strong. We all experience, September 11th in some way. So leadership is strengthened by being empathic, putting ourselves in other people's shoes. And it's really important that leaders can do this to help them pull their department, their teams together, and to really be empathic in how they move forward. So you hear a lot of the leaders talking about saving lives is the most important thing, and decisions about opening the country in a very safe and strategic way. So what are characteristics of effective crisis leaders? So this comes from the work and research of Erica James, and she defines crisis management as a set of reactionary behaviors that are required to address the here and now. So this I thought was really fascinating. And she said, if the goal is return to normal, it's not a productive goal. And I think that might be a human tendency. We all want it to go back to normal. And so to think about the situation as characterized as a crisis, never return to normal. I think about when we were flying in airplanes and everything that happened with September 11th, and then that started more the so we had to remove our shoes, all kinds of different terrorists. That became our new normal. So again, situations characterized by crisis will never return to the normal. And so your competitors, they'll continue to advance, they'll lead their organization and take advantage of your negative situation and leapfrog you. So your normal, your industry and competitors have moved on. So part of crisis leadership is anticipating what the future will be and respond to the here and now. And what characterized those people who move, right? So we could feel fear, anxiety, and depression, and you need to let your team feel it at different times. And as the leader, definitely feel it. But effective leaders move to resilience, to being proactive, start to communicate, and saying that, the sun will rise again and the organization, most importantly, will be better as a result of this experience. So these are the different um, characteristics that we'll go into a little bit deeper. So reflect, learn, and adapt. And I'm sure that you all are doing this really effectively. We've all had to move to social distancing. We've all had to move to virtual team meetings, webinars, WebEx events, and there's learnings from it. So pay attention, document and explore the learnings, leverage digital platforms, and engage in different ways of being more effective and efficient. So let's document it, keep track of it, and utilize it when we come out of this crisis. There's a HBR article, The Hard Truth About Innovative Cultures by Gary Pisano, which I thought was really, really good. And this is one of the um, workshops that I've taken in executive education, and it was online. And we discussed article, a willingness to experiment, but to be highly disciplined. So in this process, you want to experiment, try new things, but be disciplined. So the author, Gary Pisano, says you don't want to be a third-rate abstract painter who randomly throws paint at a canvas. You want to be disciplined, thoughtful, and keeping track of what you're doing as you adapt to change. So you reflect, you learn, you adapt. So you want to leverage trust. And what's challenging is that, you can't build trust in a crisis. This is something that you have to have in advance. There's a lot of work by Patrick Lencioni, which talks about vulnerability-based trust. So letting and sharing your team, letting them know that you're vulnerable, um, and leading to greater trust. So at this time, a second characteristics of effective crisis leaders are their ability to leverage trust that will hopefully be built long before the crisis. So you're asking people to jump in the fire with you. You're asking them to make sacrifices. We're all working longer hours, especially remotely, because we don't know what day it is and when the day starts and when the day ends. And so you want to lay the groundwork for these positive functioning relationships. So see the possibilities. And I think, it's really hard, especially I know that I was just thinking about the way that we did things and kind of feeling a little bit of a grief or a sadness for how we were getting together uh, physically, face to face, and now everything's going to be remote, for the foreseeable future. So, a third characteristics of effective crisis leaders are the ability to see these possibilities, to recognize that this too one day will pass. It's hard to believe when we're in it that this too one day will pass, and likely change that we have now. Um, we can be engaging new new customers, selling our products, new ways of working, right? We're all kind of experimenting with new ways to communicate, to engage, and do things even better. So, a leader's capability and willingness to try to imagine a future, even in our darkest moments, are far more likely to be effective in leading their organization, their company, their team out of the crisis. Believe in a high pay off mentality. So what this is a willingness to take risks in responding to times of crisis. So believe it or not, research will tell us that human nature is less likely to take risks, especially in times of crisis. So you're more likely to contract. Um, you're more likely to have a narrow frame of reference. Um, Even too, we are social distanced from people, more remote, so we're more likely to engage with fewer people and more likely to obtain resources from fewer sources. Or even, we're all undergoing maybe budget freeze, hiring freezes, so there are less resources. So it's important to expand our horizon, obtain more information, gather more information, talk to people, experiment and try new things, because you see as a leader that the same way are not likely to lead yourself out of these circumstances. And so taking risk is important, and believe in a high payoff mentality, and making quick decisions, so I think an important part here in making quick decisions is that it's important that you remember your core values, the core values of the company, the core values of your team, and you try with everything that all your might, that not allowing the severity of the circumstances to adversely affect how you operate. So you want to operate in an ethical framework, respond and communicate with the highest level integrity, even in the most dire circumstances. So you want to use your moral judgment, ethics to guide you in your decision making. Okay, so this is the framework from Leading Change and John Kotter's work. So when I teach my classes, when I teach in the EMBA program or in exec ed, this is the framework that I use, and we spend a lot of time on it. I wanted to share it with you because it's an important framework. Kotter's written many Harvard Business School articles. He's got a company, he's got a website, he's got many books. So there's a lot of follow-up, but I wanted to just use this as a framework for you to understand. So the first one is creating a sense of urgency. So it's really not necessary in this case. I think people get it. What you as the leader need to do is to use your head and your heart to put that together. So you want to encourage people to change by using the data, but also using the heart to make these changes. You want a guiding coalition, so a group of people that you trust and that could come together and to think about how we move forward. Developing a vision strategy. This is a time where, you might have to pivot. You might have to adjust your vision and strategy. Look at those core goals, but thinking about new ones, creating a rallying cry on how people will get through this. I've heard different leaders saying um, to kick coronavirus's ass, so those are different rallying cries that we can all flatten the curve. These are all different things that we can rally around. Communicating the change, vision, and strategy. So we discussed doing that over and over again. Empowering broad-based action. This occurs when you want to look at there's new ways of doing things. There are going to be new processes, new procedures, and you want to make sure that there aren't um, maybe bureaucratic decisions or bureaucratic ways that they're affecting the ability for you to move forward. So look at those ways that you could um, sort of take down the walls and provide cross communication. Generating short-term wins. So it's good to look at the data and see how the decisions you're making are making a difference, right? So if we're looking at flattening the curve and you're looking at Governor Cuomo's decisions that he's made, we look at the different numbers and you see that the work that we're doing is making a difference. So looking at that data, consolidating gains and producing more change, and anchoring new approaches. So what's interesting is that this framework uses Newton's law. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. So you're supposed to follow this according to the different steps. So it creates momentum of change. So you're not going to move from 1 to 5 to 2. You follow it in that order. So it creates that momentum. And the last one, anchoring new approaches. So that's when the culture change shifts. That's when it becomes embedded in the culture because all these things happened beforehand. The piece on the right where it says the dual operating system. So this, according to Kotter, this is how the hierarchy works within the company. You also want to have a volunteer army or a dual operating system. So if you see, it kind of looks like planets with lines, and basically that shows that um, he recommends cross-functional teams of people volunteering to be a part of it and to work on a problem. And once they get the problem to a place where they think um, it's been resolved or it could be resolved, that's when you start to put it into the bureaucratic or the more of the framework of one, creating a sense of urgency and creating guidelines. So moving forward. Okay, so this is going to be a more interactive session, part of this talk. So Gallup conducted a formal study. Their goal was to obtain the average person's opinion of leadership. And the study looked at a true random sampling of more than 10,000 followers who were contacted via Gallup. And the research anchored on the following key questions. So listen carefully. What leader has the most positive influence in your daily life? And so when I this in class, people will raise their hand, and they'll ask, and they'll say, "Oh, well, can it be a famous actor or actress or an author?" And it's really about in your daily life, and then list um, 3 words that best describe what this person contributes to your life. So I'm going to ask you to do this little exercise right now. So, what leader has the most positive influence in your life? So, think about it or write it down. And once you've decided who that person is, list 3 words that describe how that person best contributes to your life. So, what leader has the most positive influence in your daily life? And 3 words that best describe um, how that person and best describe what this person contributes to your life. So the person is someone that you know, someone that, um, so a lot of times my students will recommend someone like an actor or a movie star, um, but those people are not someone that you interact with on a daily basis where it's a two-way communication. So someone might have an influence on you, but it's really one way. Like I love Oprah Winfrey. I don't think that she knows me, even though I think she knows me. But so you think about someone who has a positive influence. So I'm going to ask you to write it in the chat. So I'm seeing Megana. She's writing my previous manager. So she's and some of the things that she used to describe this person. So yes, write this in the chat. An excellent mentor, a role model, and she challenged you. Excellent. So just type in the chat um, what is what you answered. So a person that had a positive influence, and write what are some of the 3 words that best describe them in the chat. So Deborah is saying energy, honesty, transparency. Dora is saying current leader, caring, fair, and decisive. Nice. Marielle is saying a previous mentor, role model, humble, inspiring. Fantastic. Sharon is saying empowerment, trust, and caring. Terry is saying his or her current boss, informative, calm, and open. Michelle, a fellow female state leader, courage, authenticity, compassion. Excellent. Good. These are all really good responses. Continue to write in the chat. Okay. So we're going to move to what attributes do you as a follower look for in a leader? What do you look for in a leader? This is really great. Someone who provides positive feedback, challenges me, allows me to grow, doesn't micromanage. Excellent. Um, Good. These are all great. Honest, subject matter expert. What are things that you look for in a leader? They invest in me. This is from Dora. Excellent. Inspiration. There's a couple Sharons here. This is interesting. Decisive, measured, fair, courage. Excellent. Excellent answers. Well done. Okay, so according to the researchers, followers have four basic needs: trust, compassion, stability, and hope. And my field is organizational behavior and development. And many times you look at this and you think, gee, this is really basic. I want us to just go a little step further and think about this, because a lot of times we know this, but they're in the back recesses of our mind. I wanted to bring it to the forefront, bring it to that prefrontal cortex so it becomes at the forefront of our mind. Trust, compassion, stability, and hope. So let's look. I'm going to challenge you again. Continue to write in that chat. What are ways a leader can exhibit trust in this environment, right? So we're remote, we're quarantined, everything is by either phone, conference call, or Zoom meetings. What are the ways a leader can exhibit trust? And just write it in the chat. Honesty, being genuine. There's a lot about less micromanaging. A leader can be transparent, acknowledge the hardships that lay ahead. Excellent. Allow autonomy, more responsibility. Let's see. Saw some. This is from Lauren. Genuine, honest, rational communication. Michelle, transparent and frequent communication. Good. Clear direction. Assume your team is doing their job and give them kudos for doing it. Very good. That was from Dora. Excellent. Nell, empowerment. Great. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, this is how you as a leader can exhibit trust, being true to your word through words and actions. Respect, integrity, honesty are the outcomes of strong relationships built on trust. What are ways a leader can exhibit compassion? Right? This is, again, we are social distance, we are remote. What are ways, just type it in the chat, what are ways a leader can exhibit compassion? You
And
too,
I'm just going to
Marsh?
jump in real quick
Yes.
and say some people are responding directly to me and
Oh,
not just to the presenter. So if you want me to
no,
share,
no, that's
I
okay.
can.
That's okay. Maybe I could just say, all participants, if you can choose to all participate, oh, all
I gotcha.
participants. How are we doing on time?
We're good. It's about 11:40.
Oh, wow. Okay. So giving recognition and credit when credit's due. I'm just going to keep moving. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Caring, friendship, happiness, and love describe leaders that have contributed to their lives. Many of you said the ability to challenge you, growth, compassion, all of that. Very powerful. So based on time, I'm going to kind of move things forward because I want to open it up to questions. What are ways a leader can exhibit stability? Is that, again, many people are very fearful of furloughs, of getting laid off. And so it would be really important to make sure to keep those open lines of communication. Best leaders were the ones that could always count on in times of need, provide security, strength, support, and peace, which is very, very important, especially in this time. And what are ways a leader can exhibit hope, right? So this is really important to look at how we can create a vision for the future, how we could create hope in this time where it doesn't seem like, we're going to get out of being socially distant and quarantined. And so followers want stability in the moment and hope for the future. Direction, faith, guidance, these are described as basic needs. So it's trust, compassion, stability, hope. And I just wanted to share with you, a friend and colleague recommend Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey's free meditation on hope. And so you could just look it up on Google, and it's 21 days, and it's very insightful. There's a centering thought and word, and I would recommend that. So today we talked about what good leadership looks like during a pandemic, what characteristics of effective leaders, how we could lead change, the importance of hope. And in future sessions, it would be interesting to look how to lead in post-pandemic. How do we lead in a post-pandemic world? So that might be a great future session. So I'm going to now pass it over to Bethany, that's going to be sharing some of the exciting upcoming events that we have planned. Bethany?
Hello. Yes. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to um, do a little bit of Q&A. I wanted to ask Sharon, while some of you guys might be typing your questions, what would be the one thing that you can recommend doing right now for people?
Mhm. I would say, a lot of what I may have discussed is that things to do in the beginning of the crisis. I want you to know that it's not too late to start doing it now. And I think that constant updating is probably really critical because things are changing moment by moment. So I would say the constant updating, more communication rather than less. But also, too, as many of you mentioned in the chat, which to really trust that people are working and trust that they don't need to be micromanaged. I think it's very hard because we all want to prove and show that we're working when you can't see that we're working, where we could physically see people were in the office, people were at meetings. So there's a fear that people can't see us working, but know that your team as the leader is working, they're working really hard.
Thank you. Um, I think we have time just for one other question, and I think this is a really good one, and it's one we've been asked throughout several webinars, is how do you combat a persistently negative outlook from a team member
Mm,
or from a leader?
mm. I wonder if you might be able to ask them for a time that they experienced a challenging situation and they were able to overcome it, and what steps they employ to do it, right? So we've all had nothing like a pandemic, but we've all had hardship, challenging times, obstacles, and maybe having them reflect back to a situation that they were able to overcome and what were some of the strategies they employed to do that might be an interesting exercise for them to review. One of the things I wanted to add into this presentation was just all the times in history that we've experienced difficult times. I think the most recent one might be the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, and then September 11th. So having those experiences to know that this too shall pass, the sun will come out tomorrow, we will be better for it.
Right.
If the person reflects on that, it might be helpful.
I think that's excellent advice. Really great. Thank you. All right, so that's all the time we have for our Q&A. I did want to let you know that today's webinar is the first of several HR and leadership webinars that we're going to be running to highlight our executive certificate programs. That's the slide you're looking at right now. Our first one is HR for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and our second is Leaders Edge. Both of these programs are going to be running for 10 weeks beginning this fall, and they offer 30 business recertification credit hours through the HR Certification Institute. And HR for the Fourth Industrial Revolution also offers 30 SHRM credits and a 3-credit elective course waiver towards a master's in human resource management from Rutgers University's School of Management and Labor Relations. So if you have any questions about that, you can just reach out to us. It's all the information is on our website. Next slide, Sharon.
See it?
Not yet.
Okay. It's
That's
taking
okay.
a
That's
second
okay.
to load, I think.
I'll talk about it, and then
Okay. I
there
can see it.
we're almost there. That's okay.
Okay.
So I just wanted to remind everybody that we're going to be continuing these free webinars every Wednesday through May and June. There it is. And I also wanted to remind you that there's a few slots left for tomorrow's online workshop with Marianne Spatola on leading successful virtual teams, and May 28th leadership conversations at work with Kathleen Cashman. So these 2-hour workshops that we're going to be running on Thursdays are going to be very personalized, and they're going to allow for a deeper level of engagement than these 45-minute webinars. So to register and to learn more about the online workshops, the executive certificate programs, and for the free webinars, go to similar.rutgers.edu/content/executive and professional education. And then I also wanted just to remind you that a link to the recording of today's presentation is going to be sent to you, usually within about 24 hours. So look for that. That's it. Thank you so much, Sharon, for presenting. We really appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.